That's it. Or my favorite is actually I'd say my second favorite is ghosting. My first favorite is when they look you up on social media and then they tell you no. You know, to describe
So,
it.
um, for relationships then, as in like love relationships or like looking for a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever the hell you want to go for. Um, do you think your criteria is fairly similar, or do you think there's a higher standard that needs to be met, or is it looser and then whatever? Sorry, I'm gonna shorten these questions, like I said. What's the difference for
When
you?
when when you're looking for a romantic partner, yeah, I mean that's a tough one. Um, yeah, that's a really complicated topic. Because well, like I've gone out on dates, and I just thought they've gone like smashingly, and you're like, God, this person's great.
Yeah, I've heard you say taste the rainbow so many times now, so like
And then you communicate later, and they're like, yeah, like I'm just not into you. Like I don't want to see you, and then that's it. Or my favorite is actually I'd say my second favorite is ghosting. My first favorite is when they look you up on social media and then they tell you no.
Wait, hold on. Are these forms of
Yeah.
rejection you've faced before? Is that or have
Oh yeah.
you Oh,
Yeah, 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 yeah. I
sorry, I
I, I
wanted to
don't.
be clear because like that sounded so random. My first favorite is ghosting. I love ghosting people. And then I looked them up on social media and go like they're ugly. Moving on.
Yeah, no, no, yeah, no, I've had people like have gone out and it's been great, and then you book a second date, and then they tell you that they looked up your Facebook profile. Like one, I hate Facebook. I've always hated Facebook, and so I haven't updated mine since like probably high school, something like that.
Yeah, so no, sorry, that's very confusing to me. So they look at your Facebook profile and then they reject you based
And then
on
they reject you after based on your digital identity. Like mine is like borderline blank,
yeah.
but I think I had a slightly
Did you
slightly off
scare?
color joke.
Do you think you scared them into thinking you were like a serial killer or something? Like, what's
No,
on there that they're reacting to?
I think I had a slightly sexist joke.
Oh,
I mean the climate, like the political climate now, is
wait,
very popular to kind of jump on that like cancel culture kind of thing.
so this is an action. So you went on a date. Someone looked at your Facebook profile, found out that you wrote something at one point in your life that was like a little, borderline, not like, haha, this is not that funny. Why is this guy saying this? And that was enough for not a second date, despite the
Like
fact that it was a good first date.
yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah. So we
What?
canceled the second date, but like I'm talking like this was in 2000 and like 8 or
You
something.
cannot give me a year where this sounds justified. Where did
I
you?
mean, I'm guessing on the year, but like I'm talking like it was a long time ago. But
Are,
but
are you
that
sure there wasn't something more to that than just that? Like,
I had to clarify. I mean, like one of the interesting things. I mean, like whether it's personal or business or
yeah.
whatever, it's always try to get the feedback from somebody, and you might not agree with it. You might not even want it, but yeah, at the very least, like you should know why. And so I kind of reached out to that person. I had to know. I had to know because I thought the first one was great, and then the second one was just canceled, and it was like why? Like
Wow. Okay. Huh. Sorry, I've always had moments in my life where I've thought about that, like going up to someone and being like, "Can you give me honest feedback about this?" But I always assumed people wouldn't be as willing, and you've clearly gone out of your way to do this. Like those ghosting people definitely did not give you feedback, right? Like they hard ghosted.
I mean absolutely. I mean that's I don't know. That's a sign of the technology, or I don't know. It's like people are very unwilling to kind of share like how they actually feel about things.
Yeah, I don't like that. I'm the opposite. I'm a very big sharer. You know this. I share. I don't have boundaries. The boundaries you guys got to get used to my bubble, because it's expanding further and further every day. Um,
Fair enough. But like the more you kind of talk to people, I mean,
Yeah, no, that's fair. Anyways, so going back to it, so you were saying that your standards for relationships are different, but it sounds to me like it's more superficial from what you were making it sound like initially, and then you slowly figure things out from there. Is that what I'm getting correctly, or
for relationships,
like friendships versus, romantic relationships?
yeah, I try not to mingle them. So they're
Mm.
kind of two separate camps. And so I don't think I've ever had a relationship that was friendly, for an extended period of time and then it turned romantic.
Oh,
And I definitely have never had a romantic relationship turn friendly. Like
really? Okay.
we usually try to kill each other or
You guys,
something like that.
you guys are passionate. What else? You're looking at passionate women, clearly.
Yeah, it's better to, explode than fade out, I suppose. But
Okay.
no, every just about every single um like that type of relationship, it's
Yeah.
always been where I met somebody with for the purpose of that.
Right.
So it'd be like we're gonna go on a date and we're gonna get to
Mm.
know it.
Okay,
And
so
like
for you then when it comes to dating, right? Is the priority then something very more like much more specific? Like do you have this criteria like, I want a long-term relationship with this person, or is it usually like I'm testing the waters and things like that? Because like it's very interesting to me. You're the first person I've ever heard say that, and this is very unique to me.
I used, once upon a time I used to have criteria. Not my criteria was very I mean it was nothing, to write home about. It's like, I wanted somebody who was educated and they kind of had their shit together.
Right.
Uh, who kind of hit, a certain level in their career and, who had similar, interests in marriage and kids and stuff like that. And like, and that's how deep that went. Like that's kind of what I sort of began with.
Yeah.
Um, I, I think at one point in time in my life, just meeting different people was also very important too. Because I think at that time I wasn't really sure who I was as a person, and so I think like just sort of meeting these people kind of helped me discover myself. Even if many of them were not successful.
Sorry, the way your eyes rolled when you said that many of them.
Yeah, I mean there was a couple. One or two.
Okay, so you found yourself more by interacting with sorry, Jesus, I don't know how to phrase this one. Give me a second. Uh from the sounds of it, you found out more about yourself by interacting with different people and romantically, I mean. But was that different than like your time period of like seclusion and stuff and figuring yourself out? Like what's the difference between the two? Is it more like you're figuring yourself out in a relationship? Is that what you mean by that? Like by going on all these dates? Or is it just you legitimately figured more stuff about yourself?
I think relationships can push you out of your bubble, so like kind of your comfort zone.
Right.
And so, you kind of have to go to a lot of places that, you wouldn't normally go.
Hmm.
You have a lot of conversations, about topics that you may not know anything about,
Yeah.
and in that sense, it sort of expands you. But, in contrast to kind of that period of, seclusion, um, I was in a relationship at the time,
Hmm.
but I think um, there was a lot of kind of like inner reflection at that period. I don't think it was a period of tremendous growth per se, but I think I kind of became a lot more firm in kind of some of my beliefs.
Isn't that like one of the biggest forms of growth though? Just like figuring out that this is exactly like by figuring out what you believe that actually guides you to the next step and the next step and the next step because it increases your perceptions of certain things.
Um, so what pushes you to the next step, Like self reflection?
Solidifying what you believe in, right? Like, I don't know, like,
And in a sense, I mean, part of getting pushed out of your comfort zone, like it's not always positive. It could be I don't like this, or I
right.
don't like this personality, or I don't get along with this. And that helps that helps steer you towards things that you do like.
Interesting. I see what you're saying. And you can't do that with just simply your like friends and stuff, right? Is it like I'm trying to identify the difference between the two here, like between like good God. Okay, between like the idea of can you get the same level of experience and growth, do you think, from just your friends and stuff? If they're pushing you out of your comfort zone and out of your boundary, and then you realize more things about what you like, because you already have a criteria, which is very simple for like friendships, right? It's like I
Mm.
get along with them, I figure it out, I get closer if they seem genuine and stuff. Why can that not apply to like a relationship and the romantic side of things, where it's like you're getting along with them, you're discovering more about them? Like, what exactly is the difference between the two that makes it so vividly separate, right? And because originally you were telling me about like, there's a deeper level when it comes to a relationship, and I'm just wondering how much that factors into all of this.
I mean, generally speaking, like when you're having like a dating relationship, I mean, I don't know how many close personal relationships like you can juggle at the same time, but for most people, myself included, like like when you have a dating relationship, like it will slowly kind of encompass a lot of your time.
Yeah. Hmm.
Where say like even the majority of your time or the majority of your free time, you're spent with this person. Where you'll sleep in the same house, you'll eat all your meals together, or you'll cancel plans and hang out with them. Like it's not quite the same thing with a friend. A friend, at some point in time, you say, hey, that was really great. You shake hands, and then you both leave, and then you're kind of off on your own. You know,
Huh.
I'm not saying that it's impossible to kind of have the same depths of conversations, on a friendly on a friend level, but I would say that more often than not, you're going to have a much deeper relationship with somebody that you're dating. Whether that's by virtue of like simply you spend more time together, or there's going to be certain topics um, which you just won't broach with friends. You
Like,
know, like
yeah, sorry, like what?
I would say for instance, you're probably not going to get into like a really in-depth conversation like sexual things with your friends. Like I talk like joking
Buddy,
natures.
why don't you test me out a little? Just let's see where we can go with it. No, I got you. I think I got you. I think I understand. So what you're saying is essentially because of the level of closeness and this need to be around this person 24/7, you get to see sides of them that you otherwise wouldn't see in a friendship. And in a friendship, like, you can be just as close with a friend, but it's quite different because you don't need to deal with their bullshit 24/7,
Right.
365 days a year, right? So.
Yeah. When you're in a long-term relationship too, I mean, like you get to see kind of the not the ugly stuff, but the I'll say kind of like the maintenance side of being a person. It's like
Yeah.
you gotta like brush your teeth together. You gotta like change take it to garbage, or
Yeah.
there's a lot of activities that you simply would never do with a friend.
Yeah, and you know what's fascinating to me though is that I'm seeing a huge dichotomy between my conversation with you right now and some of the other people that I've had because for a lot of those people, their self-discovery or their discovery about themselves came from being I'm sorry, I'm just trying to explain why I'm digging into this so much. Their self-discovery came from themselves and what they found about themselves. It wasn't from, exploring other people and things like that. In fact, a couple of them even said that was more detrimental to them because they started changing more into their partners and stuff based on long-term relationships with them. And it wasn't until that they were alone and satisfied with themselves that they were able to find something else. You're laughing about this, thereby you have a very strong opinion here.
I was gonna interject. Like, were they female? Like, did I?
No,
But
no, 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 no. I'm talking about people from all different like genders, right? So, interesting, interesting. Okay. Well, do you find yourself to be a very self-reflective person then? Otherwise, like maybe that's the key difference is that you already are very comfortable with like the level of self-reflection that you have, and they weren't.
um, yeah, I mean, what's the word? What's the opposite of interpersonal? Intrapersonal, or
Yeah, you got it.
whatever it is. I've always been somebody who's been kind of very comfortable with their own thoughts. I'm not, I wouldn't describe myself as somebody who's terribly social ever. You know,
Mm,
generally quite quiet, and you know, uh,
you're the
self-reflection has been a big part growing up, anyways.
Okay, so here's another thought for you. The self-reflection, was that encouraged to you at an early age, or was that something that you quickly picked up and you found fascination with it all?
That's a really tough one. I mean, I guess kind of growing up, there was some level of like feeling like an otherness,
Right.
so maybe I wouldn't I didn't quite get along with other kids of my own age, I guess.
Kids
Maybe
among
maybe
us.
maybe it was self-learned. I'm not sure.
Maybe you were what?
No. I mean, maybe it was self-learned
Mhm.
just to rely on yourself for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so like being a social outcast and then trying to figure out why I'm a social outcast.
Oh,
But
go ahead.
in a
Jesus Christ.
way, it's like a chicken and the egg then. Like, are you self-reflecting because you're the outcast, or are you the outcast because you're self-reflecting?
To be fair, I wouldn't say it was social outcast kind of, but
Sorry, buddy. I didn't mean it that way.
it's like my parents put me in school like very late kind of thing, and so I was always like a little bit older than everyone.
Oh, I didn't.
Maybe that had something to do.
Interesting. That would just make you wiser and the kids around you boring, right?
Well, I mean, there is something like there is a relationship between age and like intellectual maturity kind of thing. Like I've never struggled academically, and maybe that was part of it because I was
Mm,
just at that point in my life where some concepts came naturally. But maybe I wouldn't say like I didn't get along with people, but I didn't form a large number of close relationships. Like I would always have very few, but they'd be a little bit more deeper. But
interesting. But that's probably changed now, right? As you gotten older, that was just back.
I don't think so.
Oh,
I
really? Okay.
no, I don't, and I think for a lot of people, as you kind of get older, you have a lot more kind of introductory relationships. I think
Yeah.
like you have a lot of people who are very specific. Like if you say you needed something, or you have a social obligation to meet somebody or something.
Yeah.
But kind of like after like high school is a big one, university maybe is one.
Hmm.
But you kind of stop hanging out with a group of people with kind of a common interest. And so maybe you meet some friends at like a sports club or something like that. Like I used to be in Muay Thai, and I'd know people at the Muay Thai club.
Yeah.
But I think the older you get, it's kind of like a lot of your relationships are a little bit more niche in that way, and you may or may not kind of let those kind of circles sort of intertwine. And so I think myself included, I think most adults, you may know more people, but I don't think you have. I wouldn't say that you have a larger number of close relationships.
Oh, interesting. And okay, that's interesting. So, do you think, because you talked about interests being aligned, right? I'm assuming that that's not really a criteria for you when you're talking about romantic relationships or when you're looking into that stuff, right? It's probably just with friends, or do you see a value with similar interest in romantic relationships as well? The reason I ask that is because uh, you specifically talked about like, how you use relationships to push your own boundaries, essentially, or like to expand your own horizons as well.
Okay, so your question was like, is
Uh,
there?
the extent that you look at interests or interests being aligned for romantic relationships as well as friendships.
I guess that depends on the scope of your romantic relationship. Because you may or may not be looking for something long term, right? And you might not be. I think a
Hmm.
lot of people aren't anymore. Especially with like the prevalence of you know swipe and click apps, like Tinder or whatever. A lot of people are not looking for long-term relationships. I'm sure you.
What about short to midterms or like friends with benefits? Wouldn't you still want it for things like that, or like random hookups and things like that?
Well, yeah, again, I mean, like when you say that your interests are aligned, I mean, like say you have a friend with friends with benefits.
That is the
Does it
interest.
does it matter? Does it matter what their long term like? Does it matter? Really?
Yeah, when you put it that way.
Probably not.
I don't know, can you really be friends if you'd have no interest besides, the booty call and the shika shika?
Absolutely, absolutely. Why not? Why not?
Fair enough. Yeah, okay. Fair enough. You make a very good point. Okay. And then interesting. Interesting. Okay. So for okay, so man, I'm seeing a lot of connections here. It's kind of cool. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it now. So, okay, relating back to what we were talking about initially, right? Which was to do with the fact that your life approach has changed from when you were younger to now, right? Putting that in contrast, because earlier we talked about it with like some of the changes you would make in your personal life, but looking at the values that you had as well, you were talking about how you would change things like just probably ask him to be a little less idealistic and that stuff. Is there anything else that you would like broach on in regards to more specifically this time personal relationships and romantic relationships? Would you tell younger John to do something different in that regard?
Yeah, it would have been to uh, immediately get out of my long term relationship at that time. Immediately,
L- Let
without any doubt in my mind. Yeah.
Okay, let's assume that wasn't there, right? Let's assume that
Well, no,
relationship wasn't
well,
there
no,
and
no.
you
Like it's important, and it is kind of related to like just general life advice. A little bit little bit of backstory. But
actually would you mind sharing that or is that
yeah, no, no, go for it. So like I kind of started my very first relationship like right in high school. I think maybe grade I don't know 11 or something like that maybe.
right?
And that kind of continued on like really kind of partway through university, and it was I would say like a predominantly unhealthy relationship. But at the time, I didn't really care because I didn't really have any idea on uh, well myself or timing or anything like that. I was just that's just how it happened. It happened organically, and then off I went. So that one basically crashed and burned. And then kind of within a week or something like that, I kind of met somebody else, and then kind of started another kind of very long term relationship. So about 5 years. Um, and I think the reason why I kept that relationship kind of going on for as long as it did, part of me felt kind of committed to the investment, but I think the other part of that was a bit cowardice,
Oh,
and I wasn't again really kind of sure of my own value, or I wasn't really sure what I wanted, and maybe at the time I didn't really want to be alone, and so I kind of had this again very kind of unhealthy relationship that I kind of sustained, and again nobody was better off that I did that. Like I think if I could go back and give myself advice, it would have been to just to immediately stop that relationship right then and there.
huh, interesting. And cowardice. So, that cowardice, was that out of fear of being alone, or was that just you were not self-confident in yourself, or was it because you were saying about your family as well, right? How like you want to be the knight in shining armor in regards to the business, the family business and stuff. So, I'm wondering how much of that is like this idea of loyalty that was ingrained in you, or like that you felt a need for
I
that.
mean, it was definitely part of that. Like I thought maybe I could not fix somebody, but maybe I could kind of help them kind of get to that next level in life. I thought I could. They ended up actually, I think, failing high school or some goddamn thing. I think they failed math or whatever,
Yeah.
whatever it was, and that was a big kind of detriment in their life. And I thought, well, hey, I have I'm pretty slick with this stuff. I could kind of tutor you, I could help you, and then if you got this, maybe that would kind of help you be happy.
Yeah.
And I think kind of what happened is they sort of got into this weird anxiety spiral where, they didn't feel like they were good enough. And then it caused them to, do funny stuff like the bathroom at school or whatever, instead of going to class. And then they didn't do well. And then they felt like they weren't good enough. And then it just,
Spiraled.
it spiraled into this just,
Yeah.
sequence of ugliness. And then they ended up actually kind of with a bit of a drug problem. And then it just, I don't know. I think I was wrong to hold on to that one for as long as I did. And again, like you said, maybe loyalty is kind of the polite way of phrasing that, but I think it was because I just wasn't sure what life would have looked like if I kind of cut that out of my life because it was such a big part of me for so long.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought you were gonna say more there. It looked like you were saying more. Okay, interesting. Dude, I'm seeing a pattern here, by the way. Can I just point that out? Like, it's a pretty cool pattern too, because it's helping me identify you as a person more and more, right? Like you're coming from, because even when you're talking about like your current, like the most recent rut you had with like not having a career thing and so on and so forth, right? Like a big part of you is all about like fixing people and like about finding out solutions to different problems or finding a better way to do things. And then there's clearly a part of you that genuinely like cares about like everyone, right? Like by everyone, I mean it's clearly become more and more selective. Like I'm assuming like with that X that you were just talking about right now, like that's the first part, like little cut, and then there's like a second cut with like your family and stuff, and like your job stuff and whatever else that's going on with that stuff, and then you're quickly identifying ways to like limit your friendships and stuff, but as well as finding healthier and more loyalty in relationships and things like that. Correct me if I'm wrong about any of this, but that's kind of cool.
Nothing sets you on a truer path than, immediate burning, excruciating failure. I mean, it definitely helps you get aligned, anyways.
I, I don't know if I would call that failure though, right?
That one, yeah, that was.
Which one? Sorry.
Oh, like at least with the last relationship, I mean, that was the absolute brutal failure. And part of that is, say when you form a relationship with somebody, um, and it's somebody that you cared about, or
Hmm.
you have a lot of life experience with.
Yeah.
Like you should both be able to kind of recognize it, and then you both should be able to kind of like respect, the memory of kind of what you built, and you should both be able to kind of walk away, as adults, and that's definitely not how it turned out. So
Interesting. Okay. So you're looking at it as a failure because of the relationship itself or the dynamic of what you feel like like ending a relationship should look like, right? That's why you consider it a failure is because it was so raw on one side.
I I think it brought out a lot of ugliness, and I think in the past, like it would be a disrespect to yourself to kind of not recognize that you and this person, had something that was valuable.
Yeah.
And moving forward, like you both kind of acted in such a way that it's now like it's so perverse, it's so like corrupt, that all of this kind of goodness that you felt like you had anyways is is completely countered to how untenable and gross the reality is now.
Hmm. Okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I've never looked at things that way. That's why that's very different for me. Like when I see like a friendship or a relationship ending, my primary focus turns to being kind of grateful for the experience, right? No matter how dark or anything like that it is,
Yeah,
because that's where you like learn the most, right? And then you experience the next thing.
I mean we're friends, but just you hang in there, kitten. when you you know
when you grow up.
the part of it is because it's a bit of a shattered perception, right?
Hmm.
I think it's like when you form a relationship with somebody that's very deep and meaningful, like not all of it might be real, but your perception of it is that it is real. And then when you kind of wake up, and then your your again, I guess your perception of what it was breaks. It kind of breaks everything behind it. Um, I think you really have to kind of be there in person and kind of have that happen to you for you to really kind of understand the gravity of it. So I think until you've really kind of had a close relationship and it's gone sour, like it'd be totally foreign. Like you couldn't read it in a book and sort of grasp, how that feels.
Hmm. Hmm. No, that's totally fair. I mean, I'm not completely like naive to that stuff, so it's not like I haven't been there in that regard. But I agree with you. I don't understand the gravity of what you went through with all of that, right? So
Like I, like I
no chance. It would be impossible for me to understand that.
I've had extended dating relationships. Um,
Hmm.
let's just say that you were dating for, oh, I don't know, I can't remember what this was. Like that was quite a bit. Let's just say it's like 6 months or something.
Yeah.
Give or take. But it was like a non-sexual dating relationship. And I know that sounds like very bizarre, but
No, 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 it doesn't. Go on.
that it's totally different. It's very shallow in depth, I guess.
So, is there a certain level of depth that you feel from sex itself, like getting that kind of physical intimacy with someone? Is that what takes it to you feels even further? Because the only reason I ask is because you brought that up as the specific example, right? And the thing that you're saying was lacking there was physical intimacy.
Right. Fair point. Um, yeah, I genuinely think that the, the complicating factor is like you can have a sexual relationship with somebody without establishing trust. Like
Right.
like you can, but on the same token, like it's not the same thing as like say if you had a very kind of deep trust relationship that went down that route. Um, that's a tough one. Like, is it necessary? Uh, Probably, yeah. I think it would be. I think it's like an entirely kind of human route. I uh, I think
So,
yeah.
what if it wasn't sex? What if it was just physical intimacy in different forms, right? What if you're not like, getting down and dirty and into the grounds or into the bedroom, but like every other sense of it, you're feeling the physical intimacy, you're like, exploring each other's bodies in other ways, or like, there's that touchy feeling and the flirtatious side of things. Do you deem that enough for it to be considered like something more?
Mhm.
Yeah, this is very fascinating to me. That's why I'm asking. It's like
Yeah.
never,
Fair
never,
enough.
never thought about it that way.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure whether it's like I mean kind of the fun way to imagine it was bases, but like I'm gonna imagine it more like barriers or something like that. You say, well, what if you stopped here and you said
Yeah,
no, nothing around here, but it's all kind of fair game over here.
yeah.
Um, like is setting up barriers in a relationship like does that is that conducive to kind of building that trust? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that one.
No, that's fair. And you know what? The other part of the reason that I asked that is because I know, um, especially coming from like I know a lot of religious people, right? And they don't act like, especially for arranged marriages, which I've gotten to witness quite a few times. You don't actually get the physical intimacy till like after you're married off and stuff, right? And previously,
Yeah,
I've had friends that always had the one complaint, and you can give your opinion on this one as well because I was genuinely curious. And the complaint is, oh, what if I like everything about the person? What if you like everything about the person, but the sex is super bad? Right? Like,
yeah. I mean, that's that's a tough one. So, I mean, there's kind of, I mean, there's two points you can approach that. It's like, well, like one, you can learn to be a better partner. Like it's
yeah,
not like an impossibility,
yeah, of
you
course,
know,
communication,
with
right? That goes into it all.
enough communication. But the other one, the other part of that is like the whole idea behind arranged marriage, like is fundamentally artificial, right? And like,
You're gonna have to elaborate a little further on that artificial.
well, no, it's not like two people, two people really like each other and then they decide to like go hook up. Like it's not like that. It's
Yes.
it's essentially like hey, here somebody's over here, somebody's over here. Well, on paper they seem like a good match, right? Like you talk to each other like how was your coffee? Great, great. Boom. Oh, yeah, hey, married. Like done. Perfect. Um,
That's a very, very small-minded view of arranged marriage, but okay.
I, I've heard it. I mean, I'm sure
It does exist. What you're talking about certainly
there's
exists. In fact, what you're talking about is even nicer than what sometimes exists in like places like India, where it's like, oh, your astrological sign matches this other astrological sign.
yeah,
Married, 13 years old. Congratulations. Bye.
yeah, like
So it does exist,
yeah,
yes.
maybe maybe there's more lengthy checkbox, or maybe
It's
you get to meet
certainly a
them.
spectrum. It's a spectrum for sure. But yeah,
Yeah, you're gonna meet them 10 times, or like whatever. Like
ten
it,
times.
it's.
Dude, it's lucky number seven. Come on.
But the
And
point
anyway,
what we're
I'm
saying,
sorry, I'm taking away from your. Yeah, okay.
but it's not quite as organic.
Yeah.
Where people they know that, or they feel like they're a good match, and then they run off. You're putting people together, and like I've heard the argument there. One is can you learn techniques to have kind of very in depth trust building conversation with somebody, and it's like yeah, absolutely. You can do that kind of thing. Could you learn to kind of communicate and kind of build something deeper? It's like, yeah, absolutely. Now, that being said, is everybody knowledgeable enough and willing enough, and they know enough to kind of have those types of conversations? And it's like, no, absolutely fucking not. Like most adults, that I've met anyways, don't have those kinds of conversations.
You mean the emotional intelligence to be able to identify and figure out what they actually want, what they actually need, and what kinds of questions they need to ask to figure someone else out, right? Like that kind of conversation.
Sure. Yeah. Or, again, it's if you've kind of set up barriers, within a relationship, it's like, can you let somebody in, can they play in this ground? Like, can you move in kind of the next segment along? Like, are they willing to kind of be able to play in this, and be vulnerable and kind of play within
Mm,
these boundaries?
I genuinely agree with that. Like,
Yeah. And I don't think I don't think in the best of times people are able to do that.
yeah.
And I think certainly when you're artificially smudging people together, like does it work? I don't know.
So,
The thing is, like, it depends on like expectations, on
oh,
how well something works. If both people are going into it with the expectation that like this is just the end all be all, and you're both totally aligned on that and you're on board, like maybe that is good enough.
I think there's a difference though, and I think the difference is like I personally, in my opinion, um, for arranged marriages, the spectrum part of it for me comes from the fact that it's actually not, like we're totally aligned and we're gonna make this work. In fact, I think that people going into those kinds of conversations with that attitude, it's a very detrimental thing, especially for people like me who are like, am I considered second generation? You're gonna have to clarify this. The second generation immigrant or like pretty much
If
raised here, not quite.
you were born here, then I don't.
Ooh, I don't freaking know. Whatever. Anyways, but like growing up here versus like seeing those experiences there, I think to me the biggest issue is we like a lot of people that have to go through arranged marriage situations. they don't understand what that's actually supposed to look like. They don't, right? They genuinely don't because like what you're talking about is what goes through the heads of a lot of people, including people that are supposed to be going through the arranged marriage situation. But at the same time, a lot of people that are here are like westernized, right? They're very much westernized. Thereby they don't have the capability or the cultivation like they did back in Pakistan or places like that where it's a lot more smooth. It's a smooth transition to this. Like it's an expectation, like you're describing, right? Over here, there isn't that. There's this idea of we have our own freedoms and so on and so forth. And so it's a hybrid model of what an arranged marriage is supposed to look like. And because of that, you have both the struggles that you're talking about with like, I need to identify my partner, I need to figure these things out, and I have like specific lists or specific things as I'm going through these relationships, I'm figuring things out. And also that idea of, oh, how much do I need to make this work because, my family pressure is there and this is there and this is there and this is there, right? So, but I agree with you. I think the bigger issue is that, and I think this applies even to, people in relationships in general, and that's that you're a thinker and you've identified yourself and you've gone through the experiences where you're continuously identifying different ways of fixing your ideas of where success is going, where your values are adapting as situations are being presented to you. It's very apparent from literally everything you've said. But 99.9, okay, I'm making up numbers now. Anyways, most people in my opinion don't have that capability. They legitimately don't, right? And it's not just because you know, they don't want to be able to do that. I think it just never even occurs to them that they need to do things like that, right? Like you've had a lot
Right.
of self-reflection going on, but how many people are there that never ever do, right? Like you look at the people around you right now at let's say your old workplace because you're enjoying your new one and we're not going to shit on it yet, okay? But at your old workplace, and how many people would you identify as like, hey, does this person actually deserve to be in this kind of position? As someone that was a VP of a company, I'm sure you've seen that a lot, right? Like where you've had to question like hiring decisions and things like that, or like question the extent to which this guy's able to interact with other people or this girl's able to interact with other people and like maintain those things, right? And a lot of that comes from having a better level of EQ and understanding your surroundings, understanding the people that you're working with, and understanding what you want. And I think that's lacking, and I think that applies to like everything, right? So I don't know. I feel like that problem's there whether you're going through an arranged marriage situation or you're going through a personal relationship or you're going through a sexual relationship or a romantic relationship with someone. And that's understanding your own emotions and what you're looking for, understanding what they're looking for, and trying to figure out the balance and the boundaries with that. So, and I feel like
Right.
that's what you've been like working at this whole time, or what you were talking about this whole time as well, right? Like, it's just there's deeper levels of intimacy that goes into each thing.
Right. And and again, I simplify it by thinking on levels and kind of
Yeah.
within these certain levels, like
Mm-hmm.
you can have kind of different frames of mind, right? And some, I mean, that kind of a related idea to that would be kind of like heuristics or resolution or something like that, or like how finely or coarsely, you need to view a topic, that kind of includes yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, sometimes you don't need to understand, you know, ideas or yourself really all that much in order to kind of get by. You don't need it. Like,
Absolutely.
I feel like even at my time, at my previous employment, it's like, maybe somebody wouldn't really need to know their job well at all. Like
Yeah.
they just need to know it well enough to do it.
Yeah.
But beyond that, nothing. Like it's like say, you're a truck driver. Like, do you need to know how an engine works?
Probably not. No, that
Really?
that makes a lot of sense. But I think that's where you get into this whole idea of like this is going back to the whole success thing, right? Like, what are you exactly looking for in life? Are you looking for meaning through your work? Are you looking for meaning through your family? Are you looking for meaning through that? And if so, where do you want to put your efforts in, right? Like, I've talked to a friend before, and he was trying to identify that in his head, there's a difference between like, um, his personal life and the way that he behaves and dictates his personal life, and his professional life and the way that he behaves and dictates his professional life, right?
Right.
And to me, it's like, should they really be that different from each other? Like, why is there such a big distinction? Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying go around in workplace and like, in your personal life, if you're a huge womanizer, start doing that in the workplace or anything like that. But I do mean that was a terrible example. I'm sorry. I don't know why that was the first thing that came to my head. You're talking about cancel culture. It's still in my brain. Yes, but to me, I think like there shouldn't be that big a dichotomy between the two. I think that if you're like trying to achieve something and your goal is like at a high level to be like, hey, this is my goal, this is certainly my goal, and you want to inspire towards that, then you need to start focusing more of your efforts that way. And that means building yourself as a person that way, right? So like if you're talking about like those truck drivers, which is a weird example of this, they might not need to know how to fix their engine, but there's certainly other areas that they need to be experts on, like sleep management, figuring out the best driving routes, figuring out how to manage those long distance travels. What are they doing with the time when they're doing those long distance travels and things like that, right? So,
In a very ideal world, yeah.
in an ideal world, but it could also just be that they're doing the job just for the money, and then their happiness is coming from somewhere else, or their idea of success is from elsewhere, right?
I'm very, very true. Very true. I think with a lot of people, they don't. I'm not sure. Again, at least with a lot of the people that I've worked with, they don't kind of glean a huge amount of meaning out of their work. It's more a means to an end.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm seeing that a lot more as well. That it is a means to an end, but then the question becomes like, oh, I still think the question is, what do you want with your life, right? And I think that's the harder question to answer, right? Like, I don't know. For me personally, for example, if I'm looking at like someone's a VP of a company and stuff, I'm more awe-inspired by the fact that, they were able to put in that dedication, figure out the ways around that, and like those processes, as opposed to looking at, oh, they're the VP of a company, thumbs up, right? And when I look at like a mother of like three kids, right? And that's all she wants to be is like a mother of three kids, and she's going out of her way to do research and stuff into like how do I best raise these three kids. To me, that's also quite beautiful because like that's hard to do to try and succeed in that regard, like, especially because they're kids, right? And they have their own minds and their own forms, and you have to learn to adjust to that and adapt to that, and that's a constantly evolving relationship as life goes on, and you got to constantly reevaluate, hey, this is how I looked at them when they were 4 years old, this is how I'm looking at them when they're 8 years old, now they're 12 years old, holy shit, they're 18, and suddenly we're getting into like, yeah. Okay, anyways, I'm
Yeah,
digressing
yeah.
a little bit.
Fair, fair enough.
So
I mean, going back to the EP thing.
yes. Hmm.
For example, I don't have a tremendous amount of respect for things like that, and I genuinely don't think a lot of people really kind of put in that time and that kind of dedication to sort of really learn the craft, so to speak. To me, it's more of just it's an expectation or a result of a social structure.
Hmm.
It's there because it's there. I think these organizations just kind of grew that way.
Hmm.
Uh, I
Well,
think, yeah, no, I was gonna say I think if you sort of looked at a lot of organizations, you could hack and slash these puppies to nothing. You can eliminate, tons of positions, and you don't need these people. You don't need these expectations. You don't need the social complexity.
I see the consultant in you kicking and like improving these processes.
Yeah, so much of life is,
Hmm.
um, it's kind of that human element, that social expectation element.
Yeah,
Um,
and you know what? With that being said, that's why when I asked you initially, and like I want to go back to this again, um, for you, success, like in a more longer term, then what is that currently? I'm gonna state this part very clearly. Currently look like I know you said you're like you're enjoying your job and you want to focus on that and you want to focus on like moving out of the house and you want to focus on creating that car, that passion car that you're talking about. But success in general and like to you, what do you deem that to be, and why do you deem that to be your success? Or have you even thought of it that far, or do you even want to think of it that far, right?
oh, I can answer you pretty flatly on a lot of that stuff.
Oh, okay.
I mean, obviously, one of the longer term objectives is, I'd like to actually, have a family of my own
Hmm.
and maybe not drive and burn it into the ground. Uh, that
Sorry,
that would be good.
that's not
I,
funny.
I would, I'd like to maybe kind of equip my kids with um, a lot of things that were maybe lacking in my life. And like I'm not saying that my life was wanting. I got to go to swim lessons and all that stuff that I mean a lot of kids couldn't. Right? Again I didn't live a life of want, but being a father figure, for a family would be definitely a long-term objective.
Hmm.
Kind of beyond that is I would love to kind of get off this little hamster wheel that we have, in terms of um, working for food. Like I think you can kind of hit a certain level of, say like personal wealth where you don't have to play these idiot games with people, and you can kind of just do whatever you want and you can go wherever you want and you don't really have to kind of trade your time.
Hmm.
I think very few people kind of hit that level. And I think, well, I mean, partially by necessity, but I think like if you were one of the people that was able to do that, then you know you could explore a lot of other things that are much more meaningful to you.
Hmm.
Do you want what do you mean, like a third or what do you mean?
Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure you're finished your thought. That's all. Okay, interesting. So, okay, so the hamster wheel. Okay, that makes sense. And in regards to what you were saying about your kids, right? Like, I guess my question to you would be, especially given like the whole family situation. Like, you literally just said that I don't want them to burn them to the ground and stuff, right? But in regards to that, what would be like 4 or 5 things that you would like? Okay, ignore the number there, but what would be some things you would tell your kids to like watch out for? Or how would you want them to be raised differently than you? What kind of values would you want them to have? Would it be more current, like pragmatic, like your current thoughts are, or would it be more idealistic, like you originally were?
Yeah, I mean that's a tough one. That really kind of digs at that, that left versus right kind of thing.
You're talking to the wrong person about that, but go on.
Well, anyway, it's about whether you raise somebody to be like a self-sustaining individual or somebody who
Hmm.
you know um, views society like you know you're trying to kind of create equal opportunity for everybody. I mean, like and there's it, it's a bit of a give and take on that one.
Hmm.
Like if I was if I were to kind of give any advice on that, um, yeah. Self-sufficiency is definitely a big one. I don't think I'm ever going to kind of be able to get away from that.
Hmm.
But on the same token, about like risk taking, I would, if I could ever go back. I mean, this one's a lot less general.
Yeah.
But I don't think I would ever employ family members in a family business ever, ever. Because the problem is that you're having those like overlapping kind of boundary issues
Yeah.
where your expectations aren't kind of aligned,
Hmm.
with reality, where you're kind of polluting, say business judgment with kind of personal feelings, and you're contaminating personal feelings with things that really shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
But I'd like to think like, by the time I sort of get to that phase of my life, I'm going to be a lot more, uh, maybe elegant in my communication, and I'm going to be able to sort of like have these types of discussions that maybe I couldn't have, when I was growing up.
Like with your parents, you mean? Or I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
okay.
I'm not, yeah, not painting your parents in a negative light, but I just,
No, I don't think that sounds negative at all.
yeah,
I think that sounds normal, right? Like that's how most people were raised with their parents. It wasn't like open conversations. It was
right,
often they're trying to take care of you, right? Like that makes sense.
right, right. Fair enough.
Yeah, okay. No, that makes sense. So family, okay. But would you still want to run your own business then? Like, is that an actual thing that you're considering for the future?
Um, yeah, I'd probably say yeah. And I mean, like part of that, it's more complicated rather than like I'd like to make, bucket loads of money.
Yeah.
Um, like I think there's like a lot of levels in which you can kind of play, within a society, but in a way, you have a responsibility to everybody to kind of make sure that, the world is, straight and true and pure and, things actually operate the way that they should. And I know that that sounds funny, but the only reason why, you can drive a car down the street or, take a plane or like go to, have a meal, it's because like you have an expectation that things are going to work, right? Like you're not going to go get food poisoning in a restaurant or, nobody's going to like murder you on the street or, like whatever. But I think with my skill set, the way that I can kind of contribute to society is, I can have, like say like a properly functioning organization that provides value,
Hmm.
and like that's going to be my way on contributing back. Like I don't think I'm ever going to be that popular in politics or anything like that. So, and I've never really been a big one on say like volunteering time or whatever, but I think genuinely you should eventually kind of hit a level where giving back to society is kind of like something that you kind of need to do.
Right.
Like I can't like I use Bill Gates as an example, and maybe it's not like the most appropriate, but and especially in light of infecting everybody with 5G through vaccines and whatever crap that was. But
Dude, this
the
is going on YouTube
the reason,
right
yeah,
now.
the reason why I like Bill Gates is you know like he formed an organization, but eventually like he transitioned himself out.
Yeah.
And like it was the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation or whatever it was. And so instead of like just solely, focusing on Microsoft and, trying to turn a profit and, making shareholders, lots of money and all that stuff, he actually could kind of dedicate like a lot of resources and time and attention to like actually like solving things, like solving, like I don't think they've actually like fixed malaria, but like they're making leaps and strides in that regard, or clean water, whatever. So
That's kind of cool. Okay. And you have the desire then to eventually create your own business or create some sort of entity wherein you're able to let me clarify this, right? So are you trying to make it so that it's big enough so that you can separate yourself, kind of like what Bill Gates did, or are you trying to make it so that that is your way of giving back to society and making sure things are running the way that they're supposed to and those expectations are there?
well, yeah, I mean like a bit of both.
A bit of both. Okay, so
I
you want both of those things.
Yeah, I
But
mean, like after kind of seeing, like part of the reason why, again, my previous employment at a company, like part of the reason why that, you know, was this kind of multi-city, we'll call it like an empire, why it just ground into the earth like so incredibly hard,
yeah.
was because my grandfather like couldn't distance himself in the end. Like he
Mm,
couldn't separate himself. He couldn't leave his own organization. He couldn't, give up the reins. He couldn't give up that responsibility.
yeah.
Even though, like I'm sure, even in the end, he recognized that he wasn't the right person, or he wasn't, making the decisions, or like he wasn't really providing that customer value, or he wasn't bringing home the bacon.
Yeah.
Um, Leaving a business, like it's almost a necessary step for scaling. Like to really run a successful business, the one that like runs well, has like solid processes and oversight and all this other stuff, you have to leave.
Mm,
Like there's just going to be a part where your skill set just isn't good enough, or like the business has evolved and now it needs a different skill set, and now you have to step out of the way. Like it's just in my mind, totally, perfectly, 100% natural.
Right. Huh. Interesting. And how do you think you're gonna manage that with like this? Because your two big desires is the family business aspect of it, all right? With family members and then the kids, right? Like, do you see any challenges in like blending those, figuring out those two things together?
Sorry, blending which like kids and business.
Kids and this idea of like giving back, like would one take priority over another to you,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
does that depend on your period in life and stuff? Like currently right now, right? Like if say tomorrow you were pregnant and we're about to have a child because that's how babies work, right? Right. Would the priority suddenly shift towards the kids part, or would you still be more focused on the business development area?
Absolutely. I think
Sorry,
uh,
a stork comes in.
again, it is kind of like those levels where you know you have certain
Mhm.
viewpoints. Like absolutely, I think at one point in time, like um, you have to kind of shift your priorities,
Yeah.
and like that's just necessary for kind of success.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't even think of that as like sacrificing something, right? It's just
Well,
you're just
you
moving.
are you absolutely are.
Aren't you
Like,
just shifting focuses though, or do you see it as like this is an actual? Because both of them are things that you want in your life, right?
right.
So
Yeah.
so it's more like you're shifting focus from one thing you want in your life to another. It would be like in my head, it would be different if it was like
We'll say yeah. You're shifting importance, I guess. Sure.
yeah, as opposed to like because you wouldn't give up on running your own business altogether, right? Or would you in that circumstance?
I don't know if the timeline's gonna work that way.
No, of course. Well, I mean, you never know. There's always that like tomorrow you're gonna wake up, a stork's gonna come in with a child, and then it's gonna be like,
Right.
oh shit.
Putting him off to practice, but hopefully.
No, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair. Okay. No, that's pretty cool, John. Thanks. I've honestly, I've learned quite a bit about you from all of this, and it's very interesting seeing again like that evolution of you as a person. I honestly didn't even realize how much of that was like connected. It's like see having one experience after another experience after another experience and like being more and more real with yourself about things after each of those. That's sounds a little exhausting, but also phenomenal for growth. A little bit,
Yeah.
right?
Uh,
Yeah.
I agree. I agree. And it wasn't like I'm not going to say my life journey has been all rainbows and sunshine, but
Yeah, well, I mean, no one has, but I think the severity of this is it's pretty interesting because it sounds like a lot of these things were like huge values to you, right? And suddenly it's like the ground shifting each time. And to come out of all that and go into a new job and still be like, yeah, this is easy peasy lemon squeezy and still figure out ways to figure out all these other relationships, like that's amazing. I genuinely think that's amazing, regardless of like how people view like some of the conclusions that are coming from any of this, right? Because everyone would have different conclusions from all that. So I think that's cool. I think that's really cool. You should be proud, man. Proud. With that being said, do you have any other like, because I think yeah, we're approaching like 2 hours. So, do you have any like final thoughts or final suggestions you would tell people in regards to like, I guess just like life advice or anything or like anything you want to say. And please don't make a dirty joke. I know where your mind is going already. I see that snicker. I know you.
I keep this relatively clean.
Uh-huh, sure.
No, my only advice here, I think that like it's kind of very easy to sort of get swept up in like perceptions on what you think is valuable.
Mhm.
And I think like taking a really, really hard look on whether or not like those are real. I think in whether that's life or business or relationships or whatever. Um, Stepping back and evaluating like whether it's like tangible, whether you can touch it, and like how it would sort of affect your life if maybe that wasn't the case or like something was just slightly different. And
Yeah.
I know that's very open, but
No, actually, I do have one more question. I want your thoughts on this, if that's okay. And speaking of this, because this has come up quite a few times, and I think we've been talking about it on very generalized sense, but maybe it's not a bad idea being more specific, just in case you have very specific thoughts on this. Anyways, the ramble is over. Here's the question. When you're talking about someone taking a step back and actually like reflecting on things, right? Like, what's a good approach to actually do that? Because earlier you were talking about how people were giving you like advice like that wasn't really fully relevant, but it was like generalized towards you and it wasn't very helpful.
Mm.
And from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, based on what you were saying, you figured out that your best approach is like doing stuff. And when you start doing stuff, like that's when you're able to solve it. So you need to dig into the problem to be able to solve it. But for other people, would you have any suggestions on how to figure out like what their best approach is or how to be self-reflective in that way? Like what's a good method of doing that, do you think?
Yeah, as much as it sucks, um,
Hmm.
there's I'm sure you could kind of Google it. The exact name for the exercise is kind of escaping me now,
Yeah.
but essentially it's like write it down. And it seems tremendously stupid to begin with, and it very,
Oh,
very
it's
much
write it.
seems like
Okay. I thought you saw the
it,
pen.
no, no, no. It seems like a way. No, no. Like literally, it's
Write it
write your
down.
thoughts down. Like have an internal
Yeah.
discussion with
Hmm.
yourself in writing.
Right.
And the reason behind that is you kind of have to kind of process an idea like in your own mind in order to be able to express it in words.
Hmm.
Like you can have a lot of thoughts, like you might not be able to kind of explain. You can have like slightly irrational things, like it's like you meet somebody and you have a feeling. Um, if you can write it down, then I think it'll help you kind of better understand.
So in a way, you're writing it down just to ground yourself to reality, right? Because when you're
Like,
reading it, it's no longer a thought. It's a
yeah, you've processed that idea into something tangible, so to.
that's pretty cool. Okay. I think that yeah. Sorry, it sounds so simple, but the more I'm thinking
It's
about it, the more it makes
it,
sense.
it definitely sounds simple, but like like a lot of people don't keep journals, for example.
Yeah. Hmm.
I'm just trying to think here. What is that bloody book? I have it in the other room. I mean, I could go get it, but
Don't worry about it. I can write a description of it in the comments if you want to just tell me later what the book
yeah,
is.
yeah. Let's do that. But it actually had a couple of good exercises.
A couple of good exercises in it. Okay. No,
Yeah,
honestly though, I feel like usually it's the most simple advices that end up making the biggest difference. It's just about remembering them at the right time, and I think that's more difficult for people. It's just getting back into it.
yeah.
Um,
You
yeah,
can kind of get swept up in the emotion of stuff for sure.
yeah. Anyways, John, thank you again. I know you just came from karaoke. I don't know how drunk you actually were through all of this, but like,
I'm reasonably sober.
reasonably. All right. No, I appreciate that, and your thoughts were quite articulate. I'll hold back on asking such long questions next time, but no. Thanks for coming on, and I hope we can see you again sometime for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it was a hoot. Yeah, and if maybe there's like one topic we can kind of go deeper into is good too. But this
Sure.
was
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I'm supposed to say, hit the subscribe button and like the video because I haven't done that yet. Anyways.
all three people that are going to watch this.
Four, man. The goal is four now. We had two or three. Now we're going for four people. All four people that will watch it.